that said, ladies and gentlemen, in our next session, we're going to have the fireside chat. So as we get our speakers, I would request you all to stay tuned for another minute or so. We're going to start with our next session. Thank you.
Without taking much time, I'll first start with Mr. Chowdary. Basically, in the current way the PDP bill is panning out, and we also have the health data management rules coming up. Uh, just if you can reflect back on why data is so important and why whether government, public sector entities, or most of the private sector entities value data so much. So we would like to understand from you what really makes data so important for all types of entities. And second, of course, having worked in the government setup for so long, for so many years, I'm sure from a government perspective as well, you will have a very, very deep insight in terms of why data matters so much. So I'd like to first start with you and hear from you what you think, why you think data is so important, and why there's so much stress on the data. And then we will move on to Avez and take his view from a private sector enterprise.
Thank you, Amol. It's a very, very important topic today, whatever we are discussing. Data is definitely very, very important subject today. About a few years back, data was not that important because most of the Indian citizens were actually using cash transactions, particularly in the rural area. Since I come from the rural background, most of the farmers earlier, they used to transact using cash for their farm produce, whether they want to buy or sell. Everything used to happen, and many of them were not even having the bank accounts, particularly in the rural area, the farmers who are doing the agriculture activities. But after introduction of the JAM Trinity Jan Dhan program, followed by Aadhaar, then penetration of smart mobiles into the country, suddenly there's a sudden surge of using the transactions, using the not only the banking transactions, but even mobile banking transactions also started happening, particularly in the rural areas. In the urban areas, yes, of course, it was happening earlier also. But in the rural areas, this kind of digital transformation, digital banking or digital e-commerce, this was not happening earlier. And thanks to COVID actually pushed the other people who are not connected digitally also, because they are forced to do that way because there is no other way. They can't go to the bank, they can't trade their goods, this thing. So they are forced now to go digitally. But what is happening is, though the governments, particularly the chief minister like Chandrababu Naidu, when he started the e-governance, he was the father of the e-governance in the country. He started this about the 90s to introduce the e-seva, me-seva, all that this thing to reduce the corruption. That was also not going that fast in other states and all that, but he was able to push it because he believed that corruption can be reduced by using the digital technology between the consumer, the citizens, and also the government. Why people have to come to the government for every transaction? They can go to the digital media and get whatever they want. Today, it's actually happening. If you go to any village, I hardly see any farmer going to a MRO office or collector office for getting various documents. They can just go to the concerned app or website, either e-seva or me-seva websites, and they are able to transact. So suddenly there is a big push happening, particularly from the rural India, this thing on the digital governance side or digital banking side, digital insurance side. But while all these things are happening, I have not seen the kind of attention which is supposed to be required for the data privacy, or a lot of sensitive data is being transacted unknowingly or knowingly, because the education is not properly passed on to them, what to transact, what not to transact. On top of that, the cyber hacking, particularly during the COVID days, I have seen, because I stayed in my village, which is a remote village. For the last 6 months, I've been staying in my village. I've seen many farmers coming to me, sir, I lost some money because I kept it in the bank. When I went there, that amount was not there. I went to the nearby police station. They are not able to really address my problem. This kind of concerns I'm already getting. I think why the topic is very relevant today is people do not know about the sensitive data which they are passing on, the data privacy, to what extent they can share the data, and how to protect the digital assets, whether the bank assets or their sensitive health assets and all that. This thing, this many people, even urban areas also, they are not aware of this thing. I think it is the right time, particularly the channels like the debates like this, more and more debates are required to really bring the awareness, get the confidence into the common man that don't worry, your digital assets and the digital money which is there in the bank account will be safe. If you don't address that properly, then again they will go back. No, I don't want to deal with mobile banking. I don't want to deal with digital accounts. I want all my the land records, everything should be physically available, because I don't believe somebody else is trying to hack and change my the whatever the land records, changing my name to somebody else, and they're selling the this thing digitally. If they lose the confidence, the whole digital push, whatever is happening, that will come to a grinding halt. So before that, this kind of seminars, this kind of awareness programs, and government also has to realize that how quickly they can bring all the necessary controls, necessary cybersecurity. For example, when we saw that real-time governance in Andhra Pradesh government, when I was working in Andhra Pradesh government as the special chief secretary, we realized that many websites open, anybody can hack into it, and because our chief minister, the then chief minister Chandrababu Naidu, he believed that the data, once the data is available, I can take the decision based on the data. But if the data is the corrupt data, the decisions also will not be good decisions. That's when we introduced AP SOC, AP Cybersecurity Operations Center. 24/7 we used to monitor from where the hackers are coming and trying to take away the data. The IP addresses were started monitoring, and we also wanted to introduce the blockchain technology to see that how blockchain technology will be relevant to safeguard some of the documents that the farmers are selling or buying, kind of a thing. So, but still, that effort is not happening in other many states also, because this awareness has to be brought in a big way, particularly in the banking and insurance. Unless you provide that kind of a confidence, yes, my money is secure in the bank, my healthcare records are secure in the hospital, are secure in the insurance companies, then only people will cooperate to go for this digital push. So that's what that's my initial experience, Amol. I'm not able to hear. Can you unmute?
You're on mute.
So I think what I was saying was these are very, very relevant learnings, especially the farmer experience and the experience in the remote countryside within India, and even from a government perspective, the way information really helps making decisions. But coming back to you, Avez, what's your experience from a private sector bank? Why do organizations really value data so much? What's really going behind the scenes for the end users in terms of data being used, consumed, reused, repurposed? What's your view? What are your thoughts?
Thanks, Amol. Amol, coming from an insurance background, I think for us, we are the oldest consumer of data, and making decisions based on data. I think insurers are the first industry who use data so extensively. And if you remove data from our business model, we cannot survive. So for us, data is a very competitive advantage for any insurance company across the globe. And, we stand in present, look into the data into the past, and decide about the future. That's the beauty of insurance business. So for us, data becomes a beating heart. For every insurer, data becomes a beating beating heart. The difference between a new age insurer and an old age insurance is like, the new age insurer is leveraging data quality because they are able to harness quality at the very beginning itself. As sir was also rightly saying that we are having data, but whether you are having confidence around this data is a concern around a lot of state governments initiatives. So for the difference between the new age insurer and the old age insurer is old age insurers are looking at the benefit what the new age insurers are reaping from data quality and power of data, and they are also trying to align the systems and leverage the power of data. From a user point of view, if you look into the entire tech industry, which we call as insured tech, the user is benefiting immensely from it. So for an example, you are able to get policies within seconds. There are chatbots, there are risk-based pricing, there are differential pricing, there are products which can be immediately sold out. I can give an example from a user point of view, as you rightly asked. So earlier what we used to do is when we used to insure cattle, for an example, we have to go to the interiors into the country and put an RFID tag into the cattle's ear to insure the cattle, because we need to have the data whether the cattle which we have insured is the right cattle, right? So now using the power of data, technology and everything, we are able to convert the nose of the cattle as a biometric identity. So what happens is the insured just clicks a photo of the cattle rather than we going to the cattle, putting an RFID tag to the cattle. Now the insured just clicks the photo of the nose of the cattle. That nose gets converted into a data. The data is a biometric and we can insure a policy. And the customer need not wait for a long time. We need not go to the customer. We need not insure a cost on going to the customer. There are thousands of examples. For example, wear robotics. We are giving discounts based on devices which the customers wear. Telematics based on how the customer drives a car, how many turns he takes, how his behavior on the toll naka, how his behavior on the highways, how he is stopping at the speed breakers, is he crossing the lane? So based on that, we are also giving them discounts. So we are also giving discounts to customers, not we in the sense, the industry is also taking care of what the customer is eating, how many steps he is taking, because based on his physical fitness as well. So for us, data is completely created us as an insurance industry to be more of a tech industry where we are servicing insurance as a product. So we are no more an insurance industry, we are a tech industry where we service insurance as a product. And that's the beauty of data for us.
No, I think great insights, and these are some things which are very, very, or I'll say not known to common users who get insured. But while this is good for your business, what do you see are the key challenges as a risk officer in an entity which is so predominantly driven by data? Because while it's a requirement from an industry perspective, you will always do the counterbalancing work of making sure that the right checks and balances are really put in place. So what's your experience, or what are the key challenges that as a risk officer that do you face to make sure data remains within the boundaries or organizational construct? So that will be really interesting to know.
So a couple of challenges that come spontaneously to my mind, I'll just name them off very quickly, is a bad data culture, my ability to embed data privacy into my system. Data portability is something which is going to come up as a huge challenge for insurers because we have product portability as well. So when we talk about product portability, we'll also have to create an ecosystem around data portability because the customer who has given consent to a company A might not give consent to company B again, right? So how do we manage that entire thing? The fourth challenge which I see is around consent management. Our system needs to be completely redesigned in terms of taking consents. Another parameters which I'll describe in detail, all of these points, is third-party vendors. Earlier age insurers used to do very much business into silos. They used to have everything in silos. But now, looking at how the technology has spanned, everybody is moving out, and there's a huge outsourcing which is happening. So transparency with third-party vendors is also becoming a huge challenge. So talking about data culture. So let's imagine earlier it was believed that the more data, the more good it is. But now it is about the right data at the right time. It makes more sense. We cannot just have more data in place because of the privacy norm. We have to also assign value of collecting, storing, and processing large value of data against the pressing requirement of privacy. So we just cannot have or hold large amount of data with us. Talking about embedding the policy, earlier it was thought that data privacy is only targeted or tagged to IT security or disaster recovery plan. But it's not good enough because data privacy now touches around various parts of a business. So we need to have a data strategy, and our staff need to be trained and made aware. So we need to make sure that our choices of the tools that supports our current privacy policies are also part of our entire ecosystem. Another interesting part is when perimeter goes out, and with this COVID age, we are also talking about profiling devices. Organization may be able to manage compliance and data privacy from various sources, different operating models, multiple apps. So we need to be ready to ensure that we have the right data governance also to connect these various sources of data which comes in. There are IoTs, there are so many things that comes in. With perimeter going out by your own devices, and all these things also brings in a lot of challenge to insurance companies. From a data portability, which I have already addressed, that the company will also have to make an ecosystem wherein they also create a process and standard in place that they are able to port data properly to the right person or the right company. From a vendor point of view, it's a commonplace within the insurance industry to have relationship with thousands of other parties which data goes around. The level of control over the data and whether the entity involved in decision making is taking the right and appropriate care of my data is also a very important task now. So probably now the insurance companies will have to make sure or will have to add an additional parameter while selecting a data, that whether the third party is also aligning to the ecosystem or the privacy requirement around data management. So these are the quick challenges that comes to my mind of being a bad data culture and embedding data privacy into the entire ecosystem, building data portability requirement, building consent management, and taking care of the larger ecosystem, which is a third-party ecosystem.
No, sure. I think these are great insights. So clearly what I'm understanding is one is the awareness of your teams in terms of what data that they can pick, what they can do with that data, and what's enough and what's not really required is the key set of questions to be answered. So thanks for those insights. So moving on to you, Mr. Chowdary, from a government sector, what challenges do you see? Is the government really ready to address any kind of these challenges? Because I hear about right to information. I hear pretty much every data that's consumed by the government is for a purpose which is predefined, and hence there's very limited control on such data. But clearly, government organizations must be already thinking of these considerations. So, what are your thoughts in terms of how do you protect, or how do you what are the key challenges from a government sector perspective that you would like to highlight?
Yeah, Amol, I think this data duplicacy and data integrity is a big issue in the government. I have seen in different departments, for example, healthcare department will have one data. Then if you go to municipal corporation, they'll have a different data. Each department, they used to create their own data silos. Now integrating all these data sets and removing the data duplicacy is becoming a big, very complex data cleansing process, as Avez was also mentioning. Maybe in the corporate sector is much better than the government sector, because government sector, the legacy way of collecting the data is all still paper-based kind of a thing. Only in some states, they have gone to maybe 20% or 30% way. I mean, they are able to get the right kind of a data. But still, 80% of the data still, there are a lot of issues in the data cleansing. I think, first of all, they have to concentrate on how they can get the right data from different sources. Though some states are creating the data lakes, they're trying to see that everybody has to use the data only from those data lakes where every data is integrated, every data is taken care of. But still, it's a long way. So taking the decisions based on a data which is not in a consistency data, where a lot of data leaks are there, it's going to be difficult. There's a reason why still government is not able to take the decisions based on the data, because data cleansing is happening. And top of that, they are also worried on the data privacy, data security. Those issues also have to be managed. So these are the some of the main concerns of the government. So they, though every government department at this point of time, they want to go digital, but the main problem is how to collect the right kind of data, how to cleanse the data, how to bring the data integrity, this thing. So they are going step by step. I think maybe in the next 3 to 5 years of time frame, I think the issues on the data collection, data cleansing, or data integrity, how do we port the data from one department to other department. For example, Tamil Nadu government is talking about building a blockchain highway. Instead of forcing the, okay, everybody has to use the blockchain for X department, Y department, Z department. They're not doing any such thing. They're telling that, okay, we are going to create the blockchain highway. Whichever department feels that the blockchain technology can help them, this thing, they can start integrating with that kind of a highway. So there's some progressive states like Tamil Nadu government, they are going in a different way. And also the artificial intelligence, every government, using artificial intelligence the right way or wrong way. So ethical AI is again is a big policy guidelines that the Tamil Nadu government has introduced. The first policy, the ethical AI policy, was introduced by Tamil Nadu government. Some of the state governments are actually coming up with a new infrastructure, new policy guidelines, so that the departments they not have to really reinvent the wheel. Hopefully, other state governments also will follow some of the progressive states like Tamil Nadu government, Telangana government, and Andhra Pradesh government. Other governments also can follow some of the best practices. Amol.
No, I think these are great insights again. I think the whole blockchain highway concept could potentially be a game changer. So I think hats off if they're already thinking on that side, on that way. Coming back to you, Avez, having said that data is important and organizations will need it, and having set out the challenges that we see from a business perspective, what could be your key messages in terms of what could be an ideal data governance model that entities can adopt? And then we can close with Mr. Chowdary in terms of how government is thinking to kind of ring fence the data that they have. So I'll start with you, Avez, in terms of what are your views in terms of what's an ideal data governance strategy to start with?
So before going on to that point, I just thought I'll add two more points to Choudhary's point. I think there has to be a law around IoT also. We need to have a law around how IoTs is being managed and artificial intelligence in the country, which is going to be managed. I think if government can work around that particular thing, you must be knowing more, Amol, and Choudhary sir, what's the country or what's the regulators are planning to do in those areas. From an ideal data governance perspective, I think data minimization and creating a so if you look into how companies use data currently, right, there is a huge dominance of spreadsheets, for an example. So end user computing controls will also play a very important and very major role when we talk about creating a data governance structure in place. So when we speak to stakeholders or when we speak to peers into the industry, the first thing comes into whether a company is aware about what all data do they hold and where all do they hold. So data discovery also becomes, so the initial part for me, even going for a framework, will be very important, that to understand our as-is ecosystem versus the as-expected ecosystem around, right? So currently, I don't think every company will be able to even have a very accurate picture into what exactly they are holding into. So what is the as-is ecosystem in terms of data governance or data protection is there into picture, that then and then only they'll be able to see into what we can plan in anticipation with the privacy law or in symmetry with the privacy the GDPR which is being proposed. So for me, the starting point should be around creating the as is versus the as desired map, and the second will be how do I reduce the data footprint within my company and within my third parties. There are a lot of, as sir also said, there are a lot of duplications around data sources is happening also, and a lot of duplication on what data we are collecting. We might be collecting data from multiple sources, which again it becomes very much duplicate. So how do I leverage the third party capabilities which are there into the market that reduces my duplicacy is also very important. And from a governance point of view, we'll have to look into the softer element of privacy as well, which we say is the culture. Right. So for me as a CRO, I'll be putting a lot of emphasis around culture, because we still use a lot of manual controls to manage privacy, or we will be using a lot of manual intervention in terms of spreadsheet, Excel sheets. By mistake, something can happen. So small mistakes, the possibility of mistakes happening with remote working is also very high. With this perimeter completely being lost when we talk about the post-COVID scenario, and when we talk about where companies are promoting work from home scenarios, how do you take care of controls, right? So we cannot make a risk-free scenarios, because it will be too much of an investment, and it will also choke the way the processes are so fluid and agile these days. So we'll also have to take care about, we need not have too many controls in place. We also have to take care about the costing which we want to inbuilt into the ecosystem. And we also want to make sure that the processes are agile. So as a CRO, my take would be around creating a very simpler processes which make sure that a lot of emphasis is given on the data architecture, the way the data flows within the company. How do we reduce the data footprints within the multiple stakeholders, multiple external stakeholders as well as internal stakeholders, and how do I create an ecosystem of embedding various data assets as well as embedding various cultural aspect into the overall data governance model.
No, I think these are great points, Avez, very rightly put in terms of what should be the priorities. So certainly these could be pointers in terms of how organizations could look forward to implementing such a program. So coming back to you, Mr. Chowdary, and I think we just have a minute or so before we conclude. Any final remarks in terms of what the government should be doing in terms of making sure that these challenges are addressed well by the government?
Yeah, well, from a common people perspective, so today a lot of fake news and fake social media is a rampant thing is happening in the social media space. And the people now started disbelieving whatever information they're getting. They don't know whether this information is correct or not correct. So unless government comes up with some policy guidelines and some controls to punish the people who are pushing the fake news and fake this thing, otherwise the whole digital program, people will stop believing in digital data. No, I will not believe in this. I will go back to my old kind of a thing. So that's one concern. Second concern, as I already mentioned, the hacking. The way now, earlier it was only ransomware for some corporates was happening and all that. Now common man is getting affected because of the cyber attacks on the bank accounts and things like that. So these are the two things, which government has to really come with a strong policy guidelines, strong controls before they push digital India in a very big way. We should not become a disaster India kind of a thing. People will lose the faith in the digital data, this thing. So before that happens, a lot of awareness program is required, massive awareness, and not only in the TV channels and the print media, or do's and don'ts and all this sort of thing. And whatever they introduce, the digital systems, they have to make sure that data is a correct data. Data is cleans their data, because based on the data, the government officials are going to take the decisions. So unless we get the right kind of data into their systems, and they cannot take the right kind of decision. So to create that kind of a trust in the people to believe, yes, whatever the decisions are taken based on the data is correct, because the data itself is correct. So all these controls and the policy guidelines, both at the government of India level, at the respect to state government levels, these things are absolutely required. Without that, if you keep on pushing digital, it may get into the disaster kind of a thing. People will stop believing the digital assets and digital decisions taken by the system rather than the people. So that's my view.
No, I think great insights, and I'll really like to thank both of you. I think the way you contextualized why data is so important for both government and private sector. And I think the challenges that lie for both the private sector as well as the government sector are a little varied, because the underlying reason and purpose of having the data, one is more citizen centric, while other is more customer delivery and meeting customer expectations. So on that side, I think while there are divergent requirements, the challenges kind of start emerging out and kind of coming together, because at the end of the day, it's about personal information, which needs to be kind of not only protected but used for the right purpose, and to make sure that you give the best to both the worlds. And obviously the last set of challenges, and I'm sure some of these from an Aadhaar and other ecosystem perspective would certainly get addressed, but surely at a holistic level, it's very, very important that we address it grounds up rather than just do superficial work, which would tend to only create more data lakes, more disjointed data systems, without any key outcome and or key success factors from a government as well as a private sector perspective. So with that, I think I'd like to thank you and Avez once again for making time for this session. I think those were great insights, and surely people would really value these views that have been shared by both of you. So once again, thank you very much, and thanks for these insights. Thanks, Avez. Thanks, Mr. Chowdary.
Thank you, Amol.
Again, thank you so much,
Thank you, Mr.
gentlemen.
Chaudhary.
A big thank you to all the panel members.